From Isolation Studios, it's Richard Krause.
So we've been emailing back and forth, and you've agreed to do a trick for us.
Well, in the spirit of giving, okay? I live nearby a lot of restaurants that have, they're having a really tough time. I live very close to a very busy area, and it's very hard for me to see how far a $5 sandwich can go now, right? We used to get excited about an order.
Yeah.
So imagine if we all collectively together just thought about the staff, the kitchen, the perhaps the delivery person who has to go out of their way, risk themselves. What if we could take that and just add a little bit of magic to their life, and we just add a little bit of something for them, so whoever Uber Eats, whoever wants to come and see me.
I love that so much.
It's a little bit of fun. I just wanted to inspire everyone. And I want to thank you very much for doing this for us, for being stuck at home. You're finding a way to reach out to all of us. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, well, listen, thank you for doing that trick. Thanks for being a guest. And the next time I see you in person, when all this is over, I have a present for you. And it's a magic wand. This is a very cool magic wand that was given to me years ago. And because, like everybody else, I am going through my house and finding things. And I thought, if there's one person I know that can make good use of this, it's Julianne.
If I could just reach through
I
that.
know. I feel
We'll
like
work on that. We'll work on that.
But,
Thank you.
the next time I see you, this is yours.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. What a nice gift. Thank you.
You talk about managing stress a great deal. And I know from the conversations that I've had with people via Zoom, I haven't seen anyone other than, a checkout person, a cashier at a grocery store behind plexiglass, or my wife for a month now, face to face. But the conversations that I'm having with people and what I'm seeing online suggest that there's this underlying anxiety that we're feeling just because of the uncertainty, just because we don't understand exactly what's going on. And the flattening the curve seems like it's working, but we don't know for sure. And there's so much uncertainty that it's giving us all anxiety. How do you think that we can manage that sort of anxiety in a situation like this, which is, and here's the word that everyone's using, unprecedented?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of the things I talk about in the book are, first, I also talk about the fact that we kind of live in a fear culture right now. So much of the marketing that goes around products and ideologies are rooted in fear, right? And, that's problematic. So I try to highlight that reality. The other reality, we're all terrible at assessing risk. I'm terrible, Richard, you're terrible. We're all terrible at it. And so to kind of remind people of that, and there's a little bit of evidence that works, right? So, and this time, this unprecedented time that we're in right now is a great example of how difficult it is to assess risk. And it's also a great example of the challenge of good science communication. Because on the one hand, this is a true international crisis that's going to cause people to lose their life. And we've seen it already, right? And this is a true international crisis. And you want to communicate to the world that reality. You want to communicate to the world that reality. And you want people to take action. You want social distancing. You want people to wash their hands. You want people to act responsibly when they have these symptoms. So you really want this serious message to get out there. But on the other hand, if you are in a low-risk group, if you're not one of the vulnerable populations, immunocompromised, an elderly individual, the risk to you should be viewed kind of in a realistic manner. And what so many of your actions, including wearing a mask, if that's what the data says, is really for other people. It's a community action, right? So I think that's one way to help manage the stress. I'm doing this for my community. Let's think of it that way, and for my loved ones. So really trying to focus on, what matters, as opposed to this amorphous angst that's coming at us all of the time from every direction. And that's one of the things I really try to do in the book, is really talk about, because some people will say to me, relax, damn it, how can you tell us to do that now? It seems like we should be doing the exact opposite, panic, damn it. But the idea is that, and there's some other scholars who have said this, one of the reasons you want people to recognize the actual state of the world is it allows them to focus on what really matters and what's really going to make a difference.
I'm really aware that if I pick something up, I have to buy it because I've touched it. I'm looking around and seeing how other people are behaving. Did that go through your mind at all?
It does all the time. And the thing that irks me the most, though, is when you go through the produce aisle, because people are so used to picking up something, feeling it, they don't like how it looks or feels, and they put it back. And then you're just like, okay, how many people have picked this up and put it back, you know? So I do think about that too. But I've got my Purell, and I've got on my, like, a spray that I spray the bags when I get home.
Right. Yeah, like we clean everything once it comes into the house. Yeah, like we use cleaner on bottles or any kind of containers, and any kind of vegetables we soak in vinegar water.
Oh, see, I've not heard that, because we've been doing the same thing around here. It's just my wife and I here at Isolation Studios. And if we order things in, or if we do go to the grocery store, we bring everything home and wash it. And yesterday, possibly for the first time ever in my life, I said, honey, did you dry the bananas yet? Which, because we washed the bananas.
Yeah, isn't that weird? It's like, that's so weird. Like, we're washing bananas, but yeah, that's the deal. Like, you know, you soak them, and yeah, but I mean, it's like you always have a fresh fridge.
Right. And so vinegar water, I've not heard that.
Vinegar water. My mom told me to do that. Yeah, my mom and my aunt usually did that anyway.
How would Johnny Hendrix from Orphan Black cope with the lockdown, cope with self-isolation?
He would have been one of those panic buyers at Costco with like a cart full of toilet paper and hand sanitizer and just cans of chunky soup and chips, and he would not fare well. Allison would do a great job. She would be very well organized. She would have lots of masks. She would be making so many masks right now in the craft room and like donating them to the community center. And Donnie would just be like freaking out, drinking beers, watching golf in the basement, just like totally in fear of the apocalypse. He would be falling apart. Allison would do great. Donnie would do terrible.
Are you seeing people following the rules? What do you think's going on out there?
Both. I mean, it's always going to be a mix. I think, Richard, it's, you know, nobody's touched on this yet. I think it's you know, going to be demographically treated differently as things start to open. You've got the people that are 30 and under that are not going to give a damn, and they're just going to go back at it because they're invincible. And then anybody in their 60s and 70s and 80s are freaked out and might never go to a Black Sabbath concert again. So, well, I don't know. As far as people, I mean, I'm very discouraged with the people that are even playing by the rules because they're so freaked out. Like, so if I go to the grocery, which you have to go, and if I turn my cart down aisle 6, somebody's coming down the same aisle and they're like, nah! And they're like freaked out and they cross the street. It's like, Jesus, you know, let's just relax and be human beings here. But everybody's so panicked about any form of interaction, even if it's, you know, 6 feet away. It's like, it's depressing going to buy groceries and a carton of milk because you're a pariah. And we have to live. And, you know, I smile at people when I'm in the grocery store. I say hello and they're like disgusted and horrified. Like I have some kind of a plan to spit on them or lick them or something.
Yeah, an agenda.
I am so blessed and lucky for the Power Rangers, which is my first job I ever had. And honestly, so with the space between, I did an Indiegogo campaign, and that the fans that have supported me throughout my entire career funded half of that movie. The other half was telefilm.
Yeah.
And so between the two, we got the movie done. With Tammy's Always Dying, you know, I am not working as an actress anymore. So I do not have a paycheck coming in, and making an indie film and raising all the money through telefilm and CBC and Crave and NABET and Ontario Creates and all these wonderful, you know, places that give the money to make the movie. I need to make a living as well to put all of myself into getting something like that off the ground. So I do maybe 5 to 10 conventions, or I did. Right now they've all been canceled. A year I would do them so I could, you know, keep the lifestyle that I have and focus everything I have onto getting a movie off the ground.
Today I was thinking of, I don't get a lot of fitness opportunities stuck in the house. So I'm getting naked, covering myself with olive oil, and then getting in the tub and trying to get out without using my hands or arms, which is a great core workout. And then I'm using my buttocks to manipulate things, catch balls, crush bits of whatever I can find.
Things, yeah,
walnuts, flesh nuts, and also paint portraits of famous historical leaders. So it's been fun.
It's not pleasant. You know, I did a show called Bitten. We had for 3 seasons, and there was an episode where I have a waking, you know, a nightmare where I'm drenched in blood. And so on set, when we were preparing for that scene, they just put a tarp on the ground and had me stand on it and just doused me. And that was fine. It was cold. And then I'm sitting in like almost a Game of Thrones chair. And when we were done shooting, my arms were stuck to the leather and like the skin was peeling off. And so, yeah, long story short, it's not pleasant, especially when you have to drink it.
I have a quote from you here where you say, "We're survivors. We totally get it. Who would be the best survivor in an actual apocalypse?" And you say us, meaning indigenous people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain what that means?
You know, I was having a conversation with a great friend of mine, Alex Rice, an actress, Mohawk actress, and she was talking about my work on Fear the Walking Dead. And she said, "Oh my gosh, here on the res, we love, you know, The Walking Dead and these things, because who survived, you know, apocalypses better than we have? We've survived the settler apocalypse. You know, we're still here. We're making films, we're creating work, we're living lives. And so I look at disease, and, you know, I just saw a post just yesterday about the smallpox epidemic in Saskatchewan, where I'm from. I'm from Treaty 6 territory. And it decimated our communities, 80 to 90% infection. And the losses in life were devastating. So I look at our small population, relative, you know, to, you know, the larger communities, and I look at disease, and I realize actually very, very palpably that the ones who are here, us, we're the survivors of plague after plague, of waves of violence, of genocide. So when I said that in an interview, I was really thinking about the people who allowed us to be here.
I think with my books, people like to learn a little something and from the science, and they're different from traditional mysteries in that the solution is science driven. So in each of the books, I use a different kind of science. And I'm committed to keeping it accurate, because if people read about, I don't know, blood spatter pattern analysis and think they've learned something, well, they have. Hopefully I've gotten it correct. You've got to keep it short and entertaining and jargon free, but hopefully it's also correct. I think that's part of the appeal. I think the other part of the appeal of a murder mystery is trying to figure it out. It's like a puzzle. Can I figure out what happened and who done it? Who's the bad guy or girl, before the author tells me. And I know if I read a murder mystery and I figure it out before the end, I'm a little disappointed in the author, because I like that twist. I like that, oh, I didn't see that coming at the end.
It's a trailers to a movie, and you see them in the end. Because when the night is over, the stars will out again. It's funny how the small things get lost in translation. 1,000 trees and boulevards and every dead end street. Stick figures of the neighborhood, the people that we meet. But if they ain't just same as you and me, if we're counting down the hours, does everyone can see it's a It's a new day, and it's a new day, and we start again. It's a new day. It's a new day.
It certainly is for now. I mean, I've said, you know, maybe in about 10 years, I think we may want to revisit it. It was, for me, it was a sort of a battle between really liking this idea of it coming back every 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was. I quite like that. And you see us very gradually aging or coming into our prime, depending on how you want to look at it. But I very much didn't want the quality to drop. And I'm a big believer in the old showbiz saying, you know, leave them wanting more. That's just, you know, and I am a comedian, and my instinct is to do it and get off the stage and make them go, I wish he'd stayed. So in that sense, and I don't get about work stuff because I get like that about life stuff, family stuff, you know.
You know, what's bugging you? What is bugging you at home? If it means just rearranging the pillows and taking the pillows from the bedroom and putting them in the living room, or the living room to the den, you know, make those small changes, work with what you've got. I think the key is to try and keep an upbeat, positive perspective right now, knowing that you can't necessarily achieve all the things you want to. And so I think that if you're getting up and getting out of bed and getting one foot in front of the other, you're winning.
We're readjusting what we need, and I think it is a good time to kind of really get that dream from the corner of your brain and say, you know, I always wanted to own my own little coffee shop. I always wanted to write, or I'd like to be an actual yoga teacher and not just go to somebody else's class. And now you're starting to say, okay, so how do I do this? So, you know, that's really, and the book is it's a workbook. So you can write in it. There are places to kind of assess where you are at the moment. And I think anybody who wrote in it a year ago is probably going, hang on a minute, I'm in a different place than I was last year. And hopefully the tools that will help you get onto your next chapter.
The Justin Trudeau photobomb thing, I really enjoyed that because I was bringing my kids up to meet the Prime Minister. He was at Signal Hill, and they hadn't met him. And I said, oh, you guys should come by and meet the Prime Minister. That would be a thing. You know, you look back at this. And we get up there, and the kid said, Dad, do me a favor. Please don't embarrass me. Please. I said, what do you mean embarrass you? What if you're going to do something stupid? You're going to do some kind of a stunt. I'm like, I'm not working. I'm just here to introduce you to somebody. Oh, please don't do anything embarrassing. And I thought, okay. And they meet the Prime Minister. He's quite nice. And then I thought of what they said with the, and I said, okay, hang on. And Justin had just been seen, you know, with his shirt off in the background of all these pictures. So I took my shirt off and did the thing. And then my son looks at me and says, I thought you weren't going to do anything embarrassing. I said, I wasn't until you reminded me that I could.
As medicine, I'm a third generation doctor, and I sort of fell into the profession. I've always been, you know, relatively proud and satisfied with my job. But it's not been till this that I've sort of viewed, especially, you know, so many of the people I work with, the nurses, the cleaners, the clerks, as kind of heroic in what they do, you know, like comparing it to the military, and despite the risk, going in and facing it. And so I have a huge, brand new level of respect and admiration for my colleagues. And then the way the public's responded, you know, with that cheer that we can hear, it's so loud when you're downtown at my hospital, St. Paul's, it makes you feel so good. Like, you know, like the public has your back, and it makes the job easier, and it makes me even prouder of what I do.
I think for musicians, we've lived with so much uncertainty for so long in our careers, and it's not just myself. I mean, everyone I know in music, that right now it's kind of like, hey, now everybody's in a band. Now you know what we mean. Right. Will there be a gig? If there is a gig, will you get paid for that gig? Who knows if there'll ever be another gig? you know, and then you're stuck in a small space with people that you know and love, but they start to get on your nerves after a while, and there's only so many, you know, Netflix series you can watch. You're on tour basically with a band. You're drinking before noon. You're in a band. Welcome to touring.
For those actors who understand the magic of it, we also understand that there's a great responsibility in it. It is not about your ego. You are not the star. It's the story that you're telling that's the star, and you tell that story as best as you can, you know? And through the years, you find ways to hone your craft so that you can, you know that if I hold on for just 2 seconds longer before saying this next word, that a tear is going to come up in somebody's eyes over there, or that the whole audience is going to fall out in laughter. That's a hell of a power to have and a hell of a responsibility, but also a very necessary service for society in the situation that we're in now.
This job is about empathy. That's what makes it work. That's how you're able to tell really complicated stories in 3 or 4 minutes. That's how you're able to get ideas across that are unpopular. And possibly, I've had 3 people over the years, and then keep in mind, not everybody has access to walk up and talk to me or the opportunity to do that. I've had 3 people come up to me and say, something you wrote changed my mind about the death penalty. So you can't tell me that music can't change the world, because I have experience of that in my life.